But in general, any type of cross-species communication is telepathic. And when you're dealing with these ET groups, you're dealing with huge levels of species, and all of the communication is telepathic.
Dr. Courtney Brown, a mathematician and social scientist specializing in remote viewing, explains how remote viewing is a structured mental process developed initially for military espionage and later suppressed from mainstream science. Brown describes his research at the Farsight Institute, where they conduct remote viewing projects under scientifically controlled conditions, claiming that their work has been shadow banned by search engines like Google to suppress public awareness. He also elaborates on the presence of extraterrestrials, ETs, stating that they have been involved with humanity for a long time, and that his organization has had direct ET contact, which has influenced their research and methodologies.
So that's what this new stuff is with Barber that you're talking about. He was an actual helicopter pilot that was sent to go to pick up the EK craft after they crashed. And that's sort of the next phase. Almost all of the remote viewing, almost all of the stuff that you're getting now in the news is focusing on the issue of, are we alone in the universe? These ET things have been going. If you look at the projects that we have on Farsight, FarsightPrime.com, for example, it's very clear that these ETs have been around and doing things for like thousands and thousands of years. This is not new. And when we are focusing on, are we alone in the universe, we're basically focusing on a very basic, immature question of, are they real? So what Ross Coulthard is really trying to do is to push past the are they real question. So once you fully accept that they are real, and also I should say that Ross Coulthard actually was interviewed by, in another podcast, so it wasn't just him interviewing somebody else, but he was interviewed by Donald Trump Jr., which is the son of Donald Trump, who has his own very successful podcast. So you could actually see Ross Coulthard really pushing Donald Trump Jr. on all of these things and coming out with everything. And Donald Trump Jr. seemed very familiar with the entire topic. So this stuff is starting to get to the very highest levels. So, but the basic question of, are we alone in the universe? Do the ETs exist? You have to understand how primitive that question is and how difficult it is for Ross Coulthard and others to push past it. Because as soon as you accept that the extraterrestrials are real, the next question is, who are they and what have they been doing here all this time? So that's the big question that's being not asked. So if you look at David Grush, for example, and Lou Elizondo, it's always focusing on, do they exist? It's never asking, what have they been doing? But there have been hints. For example, with David Grush, he was always talking about David Grush as a Pentagon guy who has been given official permission from his office in the Pentagon to do the congressional hearings that he's been doing, the public stuff, the interviews, and the congressional hearings, both private and public. Down the hall in the Pentagon, you can get another office that says, we don't know anything about that. There's no evidence of anything being extraterrestrial or aliens whatsoever. It doesn't exist. We don't know what he's talking about. So the Pentagon, the military is clearly split. One side of it is giving him official permission. He's never stated anything in Congress that he wasn't given permission to state from the Pentagon. So part of the Pentagon is giving him permission to talk in these hearings, same with Lou Elizondo, and then the other side is in total denial. So that's the split. It's the Pentagon is not monolithic. It's got different groups, and for various reasons they have trouble with each other, but that's the two stories. So what you're getting now is finally movement away from people who have been talking to people who have been involved in this stuff, and you're actually getting whistleblowers who were actually the people that were physically in contact with the extraterrestrial stuff.
Brown claims that the U.S. government has entered into agreements with certain extraterrestrial groups, referred to as bad ETs, who provide advanced technology in exchange for control over aspects of human society. He alleges that a Cold War is taking place between good ETs and these bad ETs, with the latter working closely with political elites to maintain secrecy. He asserts that the U.S. military is actively shooting down spacecraft belonging to the good ETs under the guise of UAP recovery programs, a claim supported by recent whistleblowers like Jake Barber. Furthermore, he argues that remote viewing and telepathic abilities are natural but have been suppressed through societal structures and technological interventions designed to keep humanity unaware of its true nature.
And one of the things is that all communications are telepathic. All communications are telepathic. They don't use words like German or English or Portuguese or French or Spanish. They use mental communications. And the mental communications are as effective as any other type of communications. And this is very effective inside the ships when they have multiple species communicating. So if you have somebody who's a commander of a ship telling somebody else of another species, we need to fly the ship that way. They don't say that like, okay, can you navigator, can you have us go in that direction using these coordinates? He just mentally states what he needs to have done. The navigator picks it up immediately without any confusion whatsoever, knows exactly what to do, and the ship goes off in that direction. So these types of communications are what we do. If you want to actually see this process, when they communicate, it's like clear as a bell. When humans are trying to communicate telepathically, it's very difficult. Now, there's a new thing that's come out called the telepathy tapes. It's a new documentary, and it's also very interesting. It has a person at Harvard that's working with it, and it's a very good thing. So if you see the documentary or any of the YouTube programs about it, what they've been doing is working with autistic kids whose physical brain isn't working so great. So it doesn't have the ability to sort of dominate the process. And then they're demonstrating that those kids have absolutely clear telepathic capabilities. Their telepathy works so well because the physical brain doesn't work so well. But those kids can literally tell you letter by letter of what other people are reading or looking at. The telepathy is not in the slightest bit ambiguous. It's as clear as looking at something with your own eyes under totally controlled conditions. So that's a very good thing to start with, looking at the telepathy tapes project to see sort of how that works. So you can sort of ask, which I'll go into a little later, I think, not right away, is why humans don't have that capability normally. But the ETs do have that capability. Farsight is somewhere in the middle between normal humans that don't have any of that capability and the ETs themselves they rely on telepathy as their sole means of major communication. Now, some of them in their different special groups can use vocalizations, language, and things like that. For example, there are groups that speak German, things like that. But in general, any type of cross-species communication is telepathic. And when you're dealing with these ET groups, you're dealing with huge levels of species, and all of the communication is telepathic. But within the large groups, there are people among subgroups that actually do use some vocalizations and language out of habit or whatever. But basically speaking, telepathy or psionics, as you're talking about, is important. Now, what you're talking about with regard to psionics is something that was discovered that people who are telepathically, mentally talented can actually draw in the UFOs and actually get them close and then, and so on. Now I have to raise the issue that is the big gorilla in the room. How is it that these ET ships and the crash retrieval program that David Grush and Noel Elizondo and others have been talking about, and now you said Barber, he was actually physically involved with picking them up. Why are the ships crashing? Now, these ET ships are capable of flying across the entire galaxy to get to us. Now, are they crashing because they didn't drop into Pep Boys and get the oil changed? Is the motor breaking? Why are they crashing? So what's actually happening? And that's not being covered in any of the congressional hearings. They are saying that the ships are crashing and that the U.S. military zips out with people like Barber running helicopters and picks them up and takes them to a secure location. It doesn't say anything like what happens to them after. It doesn't say what happens to the people that are inside them. And it also doesn't explain why they're crashing in the first place. Those ships are very capable of not crashing. There's a reason why they're crashing.
As part of an effort to push for disclosure, Brown states that ETs have begun revealing their presence more openly, with sightings of their ships increasing. He claims that the U.S. government is struggling to control the narrative while efforts to censor information through social media and search engines intensify. Brown emphasizes that humanity must move beyond merely questioning whether extraterrestrials exist and instead focus on understanding their activities, motivations, and historical involvement with Earth. He encourages people to engage in telepathic communication with ETs and to document sightings, suggesting that the current moment is crucial for full disclosure before further suppression makes it impossible.
They are crashing because there are two basic groupings of extraterrestrials interacting with Earth right now. We call them the good guys and the bad guys, or the good ETs and the bad ETs. The bad ETs, from our perspective, have literally written agreements with the United States government to help reverse engineer some of the technology in the crashed ships so that the United States government can develop their own advanced tech in what they call the secret space program. Now, that aspect of the written agreements, if you know anything about what's going on, is not in dispute. And if you want to use Google, Google Haim Eshed, Haim, second name Eshed, Eshed. He was the former CEO, the top guy in the Israeli Space Directorate for 30 years. He gave an interview that he thought he was going to be able to get away with in Hebrew in a Hebrew publication, but he didn't realize how many people understood Hebrew, and it was immediately translated into a zillion languages, where he actually talked about the written agreements and the interactions with both the Israeli government, but also the some other governments, but specifically the United States government, and he talked about the written agreements between these groups, between the ETs and the U.S. government. The trouble is that the groups that made the written agreements were wanting the U.S. government to actually have that technology because they are in dispute with the other side of the ETs that we call the good ETs, which are the ones that we interact with. And there is a soft war going on between the good ETs and the bad ETs. And the bad ETs have the interactions with the political elite totally locked up. But the issue is that the U.S. government wanted that weapons tech. Now, the good ETs are trying to help us and help in the disclosure movement so that can be fully blown out and people can finally hear what's actually been going on. The bad ETs cannot shoot down the good ET ships to try to, because they basically run Earth. Bad ETs basically have the whole hierarchy of the political elite locked up. They want to keep that way for various reasons that I can get into if you want. But the bad ETs cannot shoot down the ships of the good ETs without changing the soft war into, or I call it a cold war into a hot war. And they don't want to do that. Neither side really wants to change the Cold War into a hot war. However, there is nothing stopping the bad ETs from giving the tech to the Americans so that they can use it in their secret space program and then let the Americans shoot down the ET ships, the good ET ships. So all of the crashes, or most of the crashes that you're hearing about, that David Grush and the Elizondo and Barbara are talking about, are crashes of my side, the ships that are my people. They are the good ETs. And they're being shot down by the American secret space program. Some of the shoot downs happen with facilities that are on the ground, and some of them happen with facilities that are in space. But the issue is that one of the ways that they lure the good ETs in is with these people who use psionics to go into a deep mental state, ask friendly and ask for guidance and get closer. And some of the ships actually get closer. And when that does happen, whoop, they can get seduced into a position where they're trapped. Now, the good ETs could defend themselves easily. In a matter of seconds, they could knock out the entire American secret space program. So it's not a matter of can they not defend themselves. They don't defend themselves because then the American government would then say, oh my gosh, they're the aggressors. They're knocking out our ships, which we so much need. We need that high tech. that weapons tech, and they're knocking them out. So that would then throw the American government further into the hands of the bad ETs. It would be very self-defeating. So the good ETs are allowing themselves to be shot down. And that means there's a tremendous amount of sacrifice that's going on. You have no idea how much torture happens to the survivors of those crafts.
Thanks for watching today's videos, and please leave us any comments that you think may help us find the truth, as we uncover more startling facts in our pursuit of truth. SIM swap fraud is sweeping the globe, and your mobile security is at risk. Switch to Efani and lock out SIM swap fraud and get the most elite mobile protection in the world. Efani guarantees 100% protection from SIM swaps backed by a $5 million insurance policy. Stay secure with reliable coverage, free international roaming, and unlimited data. Trust Efani to keep your communications and assets secure. Get military-grade protection, 24/7 concierge service, and a hassle-free upgrade. Click the link below for $150 off. Thanks for watching. Help support this channel and receive exclusive offers from one of our partners located in the description. We'll see you on the next one.